Mrs. Park's phone buzzed at 9:56 a.m. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Park. Paris just offered triple. I'm at the airport." The model was gone. For minutes until the board meeting. Mrs. Park ran to accounting. $50,000 for 2 minutes of work. Anyone? Terrified faces. No takers. The secretaries. Same panic. Same rejection. 1 minute left. Her eyes swept the corridor and caught movement in the service hallway. A woman in gray. A cleaner. Dark skin. Invisible for 3 years. Mrs. Park's heels changed direction. She grabbed the woman's wrist. "What's your name?" "Sonia Alfred, ma'am." "Married?" "No, ma'am." Mrs. Park dragged her into a side office. Pulled out the contract. 30 seconds on the clock. "I'll pay you $200,000 to pretend to be my son's wife for 8 months. Sign now, take off the uniform," Mrs. Park commanded. "It's either you're not a cleaner anymore or we both lose everything." Sonia stared at the number. At the pen. At the impossible choice. Whatever choice she makes will rewrite destiny forever. But wait. How did we get here? Let's start from the beginning. 3 weeks earlier, Alvin Yoon had returned to Seoul with a duffel bag, a failed Netflix special, and the kind of humiliation that clung to expensive clothes like cigarette smoke. He'd left Korea 5 years ago with his trust fund as a cushion and a dream of making strangers laugh. He'd returned with neither. The comedy clubs in New York had chewed him up, too privileged, too foreign, too desperate to be liked. His last set had 11 people in the audience. 3 of them walked out during his bit about growing up rich. Now he sat in his mother's penthouse office, staring at the contract she'd slid across her glass desk. 8 months, Mrs. Park said. Her voice had the texture of silk wrapped around steel. You present a wife to the board. You attend functions. You play the role of a married man. At the end, you receive your inheritance and the board seat. Alvin picked up the contract, scanned it without reading. And the woman you hired? A professional. High-fashion model. She understands discretion. Does she understand me? His mother's expression didn't shift. She understands $200,000. Alvin set the paper down. The number felt obscene and also perfectly reasonable, which said something about the world they inhabited. What happens after 8 months? She leaves. You keep the money and the seat. Everyone wins. Except for the part where I'm lying to the entire board. You're securing your future. Mrs. Park stood, smoothed her skirt. The board meets in 3 weeks. The model arrives in 2. You'll have time to rehearse your story. I suggest you make it convincing. She left him alone with the contract and a pen that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Alvin signed it because he didn't have another choice. Sonia Alfred had been invisible for 3 years. Not literally. But in the way that mattered to people like the Yoons, she didn't exist. She cleaned their offices after hours, emptied their trash, wiped down surfaces they'd touched without thought. She wore gray. She kept her head down. She collected her paycheck and sent most of it back to Accra, where her mother needed medication and her younger brother needed school fees. The debt had started small, a loan for her mother's surgery, another for the plane ticket to Seoul, interest that compounded faster than she could pay it down. $9,000. It might as well have been $9 million. She pushed her cart through the executive floor, following the route she'd memorized years ago. Left at the conference room. Right past the executive suites. Straight through to the service elevator. The building was marble and glass and money, the kind of place that made her feel like a smudge someone forgot to wipe away. She was halfway to the elevator when she heard the clicking. Heels. Fast. Frantic. Sonia had learned to read the sounds of this place, the confident stride of executives, the hurried shuffle of assistants, the slow deliberate steps of security. These heels were different. Desperate. She turned. A woman in a cream suit was moving toward her like a missile, eyes locked, hand already reaching. Sonia knew her face from the portraits in the main lobby. Mrs. Park. The matriarch. The woman who signed the checks that paid Sonia's salary. You. Mrs. Park's hand closed around Sonia's wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. What's your name? Sonia's throat went dry. In 3 years, no one on the executive floor had asked her name. Sonia Alfred, ma'am. Do you have a criminal record? No, ma'am. Are you married? No, ma'am. Can you walk in heels? The question was so absurd that Sonia almost laughed. Yes. Mrs. Park pulled her toward a side office, moving so fast Sonia had to abandon her cart. The office was small, windowless, lined with filing cabinets. Mrs. Park shut the door and turned, her expression somewhere between manic and calculating. I'm going to make you an offer, she said. You can say no. But if you say yes, your life changes today. Sonia's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't understand. My son needs a wife. Temporary. 8 months. You'll attend events, live in his apartment, play the role in public. In private, you can do whatever you want. At the end, you walk away with $200,000. The number hit Sonia like cold water. She actually took a step back. 200. I had a professional lined up. She bailed 10 minutes ago. The board meets in 4 minutes. If my son walks in there unmarried, he loses everything. I need someone presentable, someone who can follow instructions, someone who won't ask questions. Mrs. Park's eyes narrowed. You've been invisible here for 3 years. That tells me you're smart enough to stay quiet when it matters. Sonia's mind was racing. $200,000. She could pay off the debt. Send her brother to university. Get her mother real treatment, not the bare minimum. She could breathe. Why me? The question came out smaller than she intended. Because I'm out of options and you're out of time. Mrs. Park pulled a document from her briefcase, set it on the desk between them. This is a contract. You sign, you walk into that boardroom as my daughter-in-law. You smile. You hold my son's hand. You let them believe it. After, we'll handle the details. Sonia stared at the paper. The words blurred together. Her hands were shaking. What if they don't believe it? They will. People believe what they want to believe. And what they want is for my son to fit the mold. Mrs. Park checked her watch. 2 minutes. Decide. $200,000. $9,000 of debt. Sonia picked up the pen. Her signature looked foreign on the expensive paper, the letters shaky and uncertain. But it was there. Binding. Mrs. Park took the contract, folded it precisely, and tucked it back into her briefcase. Then she looked at Sonia, really looked at her, the way no one in this building ever had. Take off the uniform. Sonia blinked. What? The uniform. Take it off. You're not a cleaner anymore. Sonia's fingers moved to the buttons of her gray shirt, clumsy with adrenaline. Underneath she wore a simple black tank top and jeans. Nothing special. Nothing that belonged in a boardroom. Mrs. Park opened a closet Sonia hadn't noticed, pulled out a garment bag. Inside was a dress, cream silk, understated but clearly expensive. Put this on. Sonia changed in the corner, hyper-aware of Mrs. Park's assessing gaze. The dress fit almost perfectly, just a little loose in the waist. Mrs. Park handed her a pair of heels, nude, 4 inches, the leather soft as butter. Hair down. Sonia pulled the elastic from her bun. Her hair fell in thick coils around her shoulders, longer than it looked tied back. Mrs. Park stepped closer, adjusted the neckline of the dress, smoothed a wrinkle. Her expression was unreadable. "You're prettier than I expected." It didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like a calculation. "One more thing." Mrs. Park opened a small box, pulled out a ring. Diamond. Obscenely large. She took Sonia's left hand and slid it onto her finger. It was too big, but it stayed. Engagement ring. "You've been secretly married for 6 months. You met in New York when my son was doing comedy. You kept it quiet because you both wanted privacy. Understand?" Sonia nodded, even though she understood nothing. "Stay close to him. Don't speak unless spoken to. If they ask questions, smile and defer to Alvin. Can you do that?" "Yes." Mrs. Park studied her for a long moment. Then she opened the door. "Let's go." Alvin was already in the boardroom when his mother entered. He'd spent the last 30 minutes making small talk with his uncles, his cousins, the board members who'd watched him grow up and had probably taken bets on when he'd fail. The room smelled like leather and cologne and old money. Everything was dark wood and brass fixtures, designed to make you feel small unless you owned a piece of it. His mother walked in alone. Alvin's stomach dropped. The model was supposed to be here. That was the plan. He was supposed to stand up, introduce his wife, let the board see he'd checked the box. Instead, his mother was moving toward him with an expression that made his palms sweat. "Alvin," she said quietly. "I need you to trust me." That was never a good sign. The door opened again. A woman walked in. Alvin's brain short-circuited. She was black. Ghanaian, maybe, or Nigerian, he wasn't good at placing accents yet. She wore a cream dress that looked like it belonged on his mother, and heels that made her nearly his height. Her hair was natural, thick coils framing a face that was all sharp angles and soft curves at once. She moved carefully, like she was learning the space as she crossed it. She was not the Korean model his mother had hired. His mother's hand landed on his shoulder, her nails digging in just enough to hurt. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Sonia. Alvin's wife." The room went silent. Alvin stood because his body did it automatically, even as his mind screamed questions. The woman, Sonia, stopped beside him, close enough that he could smell something floral and clean, like soap. His uncle spoke first, voice sharp. "Wife." "They married 6 months ago in New York," his mother said smoothly. "They wanted to keep it private until Alvin returned to Seoul. Now that he's taking his place in the company, they felt it was time to share the news." Another uncle leaned forward. "We weren't informed." "It was a personal matter," his mother replied. "But as per the family charter, Alvin is now eligible for his board seat and trust distribution." The room erupted in murmurs, some angry, some confused, some grudgingly impressed. Alvin felt like he was underwater, sound distorted and slow. Sonia's hand slid into his. Her skin was warm. Her grip was steady. She looked at him, and her eyes were dark brown and absolutely terrified. He squeezed back. "It's true," Alvin heard himself say. His voice sounded far away. "We've been married since March. I wanted to make sure I was ready to commit to the company before going public." One of the board members, an older man with silver hair and a permanent scowl, stood. "This is highly irregular." "It's also legal," his mother said. "I have the marriage certificate. Filed in New York, verified by our attorneys. Everything is in order." The man's scowl deepened, but he sat down. The meeting continued. Alvin barely heard it. He was too focused on the woman beside him, the way she held herself like she was made of glass and determination in equal measure. Every few minutes, someone would glance at them, and she'd tighten her grip on his hand. When it finally ended, his mother stood first. Alvin, Sonia, a word in my office. They followed her out in silence. Mrs. Park's office was on the top floor, all windows and white furniture and a view of Seoul that cost more than most apartments. She closed the door behind them and turned, her expression unreadable. That went well. Alvin rounded on her. What the hell was that? That, his mother said calmly, was Plan B. Plan B? You hired a, he looked at Sonia, who was standing near the door like she might bolt. Who are you? I work here, Sonia said quietly. I'm a cleaner. Alvin stared at her. Then at his mother. You hired a cleaner to pretend to be my wife? The model bailed. I had 4 minutes. Sonia was available and willing. His mother moved to her desk, pulled out the contract. She signed. Same terms. 200,000 for 8 months. This is insane. This is done. His mother's voice went hard. You have your board seat. You have your inheritance. The contract is signed. Now both of you need to make this work. Sonia spoke up, her voice steadier than before. What exactly does making this work mean? Mrs. Park looked at her like she'd forgotten she was there. You'll move into Alvin's apartment tonight. You'll attend events together, family dinners, corporate functions, anything public. You'll be seen as a couple. In private, I don't care what you do. And after 8 months? Sonia asked. You'll stage a quiet separation. Mutual decision, still friends, the usual story. You'll sign an NDA, collect your final payment, and disappear. Disappear, Sonia repeated. Metaphorically. His mother handed her a folder. This is everything you need: a background story, etiquette guidelines, your new wardrobe budget. Study it. You have 2 days before the first event. Sonia took the folder with both hands. Alvin rubbed his face. This was insane. This was illegal, probably. This was definitely going to blow up in all their faces. His mother checked her watch. Alvin, take Sonia home. Get her settled. I'll have her things moved from wherever she's staying. A dormitory in Itaewon, Sonia said. Shared room. His mother's nose wrinkled. Fine. Security will handle it. She looked between them. You have 8 months to convince everyone this marriage is real. I suggest you start practicing. She dismissed them with a wave. They didn't speak in the elevator. Alvin kept stealing glances at her, this woman who was apparently his wife now, this stranger who'd signed away 8 months of her life for money. She stared straight ahead, her hands clasped around the folder like it might float away. The elevator opened into the parking garage. His car was where he'd left it, a black sedan that was nice but not ostentatious. His mother had taught him that real wealth didn't need to announce itself. He opened the passenger door for her. She hesitated before getting in. The drive to his apartment was silent except for the hum of traffic. Alvin's mind was spinning, trying to piece together what had just happened. His mother had ambushed him. She'd found a woman, a cleaner, and thrown her into the deep end of a scheme that could destroy both of them if it went wrong. And Sonia. She'd said yes. Why? $200,000. That's why. He glanced at her. She was looking out the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. I'm sorry, he said finally. She turned to him. For what? For this. All of it. You didn't ask for this. Neither did you. I did, actually. I signed the contract. I agreed to the fake marriage. I just thought, he laughed, bitter. I thought it would be a model. Someone who knew how to play a part. You don't think I can? I don't know. Can you? Sonia was quiet for a moment. Then, I've been invisible for 3 years. I think I can manage being visible for 8 months. There was something sharp in her voice, something that made Alvin look at her again. She wasn't fragile. She was scared, yes, but she wasn't fragile. His apartment was in Gangnam, a high-rise with a doorman and an elevator that required a key card. Sonia took it all in without comment, but he saw the way her eyes widened at the lobby, the marble and gold and absurd luxury of it. His place was on the 20th floor. 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that was modern and cold. He'd never bothered making it feel like home. Sonia stood in the entryway, still holding the folder. "Guest room is down the hall," Alvin said, pointing. "Bathrooms attached. I'll have your things brought up when they arrive." "Okay. Are you hungry?" "No. Do you need anything?" "Time to process this." He understood that. "Right. Well, I'll be in my room if you need me." She nodded. He left her standing there, this stranger who was legally bound to him for the next 8 months, and wondered what the hell he'd gotten them both into. Sonia sat on the edge of the guest bed and opened the folder. Inside were printed sheets, her new biography, essentially. Born in Accra but raised partially in London, which explained any accent inconsistencies. Studied hospitality management, which was vague enough to be unverifiable. Met Alvin at a comedy show in Brooklyn, bonded over their shared experience of cultural displacement. Married at City Hall in March with 2 friends as witnesses. None of it was true, but it was detailed enough to feel real. There was also a schedule. The charity gala on Saturday. A family dinner the following Tuesday. A corporate retreat in Jeju Island in 2 weeks. Each event had notes, what to wear, who would be there, what topics to avoid. The last page was a contract addendum. Behavior expectations. Public affection required but not excessive. No contradicting Alvin's stories. No discussing the arrangement with anyone. Violation of terms would result in immediate termination and forfeiture of payment. Sonia set the folder aside and looked around the room. It was bigger than the dormitory room she shared with 3 other women. The bed was massive, the sheets Egyptian cotton or something equally ridiculous. There was art on the walls, abstract, expensive, meaningless. She should have felt grateful. She should have felt lucky. Instead, she felt like she'd sold something she couldn't get back. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother in Accra. "How are you, my dear?" Sonia stared at the message. She couldn't tell her the truth. Her mother would worry, would tell her to come home, would refuse to accept money earned this way. She typed back, "I'm good. Got some overtime shifts. We'll send extra this month." The lie came easily. She'd been lying for 3 years about how hard it was, how lonely, how invisible she felt. What was one more? Alvin couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the boardroom scene over and over. The way Sonia had walked in like she belonged there, even though everything about her screamed outsider. The way his uncles had looked at her, some with suspicion, some with barely concealed disgust. The way she'd taken his hand. He got up, pulled on sweatpants, and went to the kitchen. The apartment was dark except for the city lights filtering through the windows. He was pouring water when he noticed her. Sonia was standing by the living room window, still in the cream dress, looking out at Seoul. "Can't sleep?" he asked. She turned. In the low light, she looked different, softer, maybe, or just tired. Trying to remember how to breathe. He almost smiled. "Yeah. I get that." She walked over to the kitchen island, leaned against it. "This is your normal life?" "This? No. This is my mother's life. I just borrowed it for a while." "But you grew up here. In places like this." "I did." He handed her a glass of water. "Does that bother you? It makes me wonder why you need to fake a marriage for money when you already have all of this." "Because this isn't mine. It's the family's. And the family has rules. He drank, buying time. My great-grandfather built the insurance empire. His rule was that only married members could access the trust or sit on the board. It was supposed to ensure stability, legacy, all that traditional stuff. And you can't just marry someone for real? I tried. A few times. Turns out most people don't want to marry a failed comedian who can't commit to anything. Sonia tilted her head. Were you actually funny? The question surprised him. I thought I was. The audiences disagreed. What kind of comedy? Observational, mostly. Cultural stuff. The immigrant experience, being Korean in America, being American in Korea. He shrugged. Apparently, no one wants to hear a rich kid complain about identity issues. I would have listened. He looked at her. She wasn't smiling, wasn't pitying him. Just stating a fact. Why did you say yes, he asked. To my mother. Why did you sign? Sonia was quiet for a long moment. Then, I have $9,000 of debt. My mother needs medication I can't afford. My brother wants to go to university, but we can barely cover his school fees. $200,000 is more money than I'll see in 10 years of cleaning offices. She met his eyes. Your mother offered me a way out. I took it. Even though it means pretending to be married to a stranger. Even though. They stood there in the dark kitchen, two people who'd been thrown together by desperation and circumstance, and Alvin felt something shift. Not attraction, not yet. But recognition. They were both here because they'd run out of better options. We should probably get our story straight, he said. For the gala. Sonia nodded. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. She set down her glass, started back toward her room. At the hallway, she paused. Alvin? Yeah? Thank you. For not making this harder than it has to be. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. She disappeared into the guest room, and he was alone again. The next 2 days were a crash course in performance. Mrs. Park sent over a team, a stylist, an etiquette coach, a woman whose entire job seemed to be teaching Sonia how to navigate Korean high society without embarrassing the family. They descended on the apartment like a tactical unit, transforming the guest room into a war room. Alvin watched from a distance as they worked. Sonia stood in the center of his living room while the stylist circled her, pinning fabric and calling out measurements. She held herself very still, like she was afraid to take up too much space. She's perfect, the stylist announced. Tall, great bone structure, skin that will photograph beautifully. We'll do jewel tones for the gala. Emerald, maybe. Something that stands out. Nothing too flashy, Mrs. Park said. She was supervising from the couch, tablet in hand. She should look elegant, not desperate for attention. Sonia's jaw tightened, but she didn't say anything. The etiquette coach was worse. She spent an hour correcting Sonia's posture, her hand gestures, the way she made eye contact. In Korean culture, you don't stare directly at elders. It's seen as disrespectful. Lower your gaze slightly. Yes, like that. But I'm not Korean, Sonia said quietly. No, but you're married to a Korean man from a traditional family. You need to show respect for the culture. Alvin wanted to intervene, to tell them all to back off, but his mother caught his eye and shook her head. This was necessary. This was the job. On the second day, they ran through the story. We met at a comedy show in Brooklyn, Sonia recited. She was sitting across from Alvin at the dining table, note cards in front of her. You were performing. I was there with friends. Afterward, we talked about, what did we talk about? Food, Alvin said. He'd spent the morning writing out their fake history, trying to make it believable. You told me about Ghanaian food, and I told you about Korean food, and we bonded over the fact that both cultures think their food is the best. And then? We started dating. Quiet, casual. I didn't tell my family because I knew they'd make it a big deal. You didn't tell yours because, he paused. Why didn't you tell yours? Sonia looked down. Because I knew they wouldn't approve. Not because of you, but because I was supposed to be focused on work, on sending money home. A relationship felt like a distraction. It was too close to the truth. Alvin could see it in her face. Okay, he said gently. We dated for 3 months, decided to get married because we didn't want to wait, Sonia finished. Because when you know, you know. Right. They practiced for hours. The etiquette coach threw questions at them. How did he propose? Where did they go on their first date? What were their favorite things about each other? Some answers came easily. Others required improvisation. What does she do that annoys you? The coach asked Alvin. He looked at Sonia. He barely knew her. She's too quiet. I can't tell what she's thinking. Sonia raised an eyebrow. You talk too much when you're nervous. I do not. You do. You fill silence like it's going to hurt you. The coach nodded approvingly. Good. That's real. Use that. By the end of the second day, Alvin's head was spinning. They had a story, a wardrobe, a script. They looked like a couple on paper. But when he caught Sonia's eye across the table, he saw the same uncertainty he felt. They were about to walk into a room full of people who would scrutinize every glance, every touch, every word. And they had to make it believable. The gala was at the Shilla Hotel, a sprawling complex of luxury and tradition. Alvin's mother had rented out the ballroom, 500 guests, most of them donors to the Yoon Foundation's scholarship fund. It was a CNBC event, the kind where business deals happened over champagne and everyone smiled with their teeth. Sonia stood in front of the mirror in the guest room, barely recognizing herself. The dress was emerald silk, floor-length, with a neckline that was modest but elegant. The stylist had done her hair in soft curls, pulled back on one side with a diamond clip. Her makeup was flawless, subtle but polished. She looked like she belonged in this world. She felt like an imposter. There was a knock on the door. You ready? Alvin's voice. She took a breath. As ready as I'll ever be. She opened the door. He was in a tuxedo, black and perfectly tailored, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. He looked different, confident, assured, like he'd stepped back into a skin he'd shed years ago. Wow, he said. She didn't know how to respond to that. The stylist did a good job. I wasn't talking about the stylist. His eyes held hers, and there was something in them she couldn't read. Then he smiled, breaking the moment. We should go. My mother will kill us if we're late. The car ride was quiet. Sonia's hands were shaking, so she clasped them in her lap, willing them to be still. Alvin seemed calm, but she noticed the way he kept adjusting his cufflinks, the nervous energy beneath the surface. Hey, he said softly. We've got this. Do we? We have to. He reached over, took her hand. His palm was warm. Just follow my lead. Smile. Let me do most of the talking. If anyone asks you something you don't know, defer to me or change the subject. And if they ask about us? Tell them the truth. That you're still getting used to all of this. People will find that charming. She wanted to believe him. The hotel was blazing with light when they arrived. Cameras flashed as they stepped out of the car, paparazzi, Sonia realized with a jolt. She'd known this was a public event, but seeing the photographers lined up made it real. Alvin's arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. Smile, he murmured. She did. The cameras went wild. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of silk and diamonds. Waiters circulated with champagne. A string quartet played in the corner. Everyone was beautiful, polished, expensive. Mrs. Park appeared within seconds. "You look perfect," she said to Sonia, though her eyes were assessing, checking for flaws. Then to Alvin, "Your uncle wants to meet her. Table 6. Now?" Now. They navigated through the crowd, Alvin's hand on the small of her back. People stopped them every few steps, colleagues, family friends, distant relatives. Alvin introduced her each time. "This is my wife, Sonia." The reactions varied. Some were warm, some were curious, some were openly skeptical. An older woman in diamonds and fur actually looked Sonia up and down and said, "How exotic." Sonia's smile didn't waver. "Thank you." Alvin's hand tightened on her back. His uncle was at table 6, surrounded by other board members. He was the one who'd objected in the boardroom, silver hair, sharp eyes, the kind of man who missed nothing. "Uncle Jean," Alvin said, bowing slightly. "I'd like you to meet Sonia." Sonia bowed as well, remembering the etiquette coach's instructions. Uncle Jean didn't smile. "The cleaner." The word landed like a slap. Sonia felt her face heat, but she kept her composure. "I prefer hospitality professional, but yes. And now your family." "Now I'm Alvin's wife." Uncle Jin's eyes narrowed. "How convenient for you." "Uncle," Alvin said, his voice tight. "Sonia and I would appreciate your respect." "Respect is earned." Uncle Jean leaned back in his chair. "Tell me, Sonia. What do you bring to this family besides a convenient marriage certificate?" The table went quiet. Everyone was watching. Sonia met his gaze. She'd been invisible for 3 years. She'd learned how to read people, how to navigate spaces where she didn't belong. And she knew what Uncle Jean wanted. He wanted her to fold, to prove she was out of her depth. "I bring perspective," she said evenly. "I understand what it's like to work for every opportunity. I know what it means to be underestimated. And I know that this family's legacy isn't just about money or power, it's about the people you help along the way." She gestured to the ballroom. "Isn't that why we're here? To raise money for scholarships for students who need a chance?" Uncle Jin's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Surprise, maybe." "Well said." He raised his glass. "Welcome to the family, Sonia." It wasn't warm. But it was acceptance. They moved away from the table, and Alvin let out a breath. That was incredible. That was terrifying. "You didn't show it." He looked at her with something like admiration. "You held your ground." "I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice. You chose not to back down." He squeezed her hand. "Thank you." The rest of the night blurred together. More introductions, more scrutiny, more performance. Sonia smiled until her face hurt. She answered questions with the practiced responses they'd rehearsed. She let Alvin guide her through the crowd, his hand a constant presence on her back or holding hers. And somewhere in the middle of it all, she realized it didn't feel entirely fake anymore. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. The way he positioned himself between her and anyone who seemed hostile. The way he defended her to his uncle without hesitation. It felt like partnership. They left after midnight. In the car, Sonia kicked off her heels and leaned back against the seat. "You did amazing," Alvin said. "I survived." "You thrived." He was smiling, genuine and warm. "Seriously. You were perfect." "I was pretending." "So was I. But it didn't feel like it." He looked out the window. "I think we might actually pull this off." Sonia wanted to believe him. But she knew the truth, they'd passed one test. There were dozens more ahead. And every time they pretended to be in love, it was going to get harder to remember it wasn't real. The first month passed in a blur of events and carefully constructed moments. Sonia learned to navigate the Yoon family's world, the charity dinners where business deals were made over dessert, the corporate functions where she was expected to be charming but not too visible, the family gatherings where every word was weighted with generations of tradition and expectation. She learned that Alvin's mother preferred her in muted colors. That his cousin Miho would try to trip her up with obscure questions about Korean culture. That his aunt Sukja was actually kind beneath her formal exterior and once slipped Sonia an extra dessert with a conspiratorial wink. She learned how to stand next to Alvin in photographs, how to laugh at his jokes in public, how to rest her hand on his arm with just enough affection to be convincing. What she didn't expect was how easy it became. 3 weeks in, they attended a product launch for one of the family's subsidiary companies. Alvin was supposed to give a speech. Sonia sat in the front row, watching him on stage in his tailored suit, and felt something unexpected twist in her chest when he stumbled over a word and caught her eye, grinning sheepishly. Later, in the car, he said, "I saw you trying not to laugh. You said comprehensive insurance packages like it was the punchline to a joke." Maybe it was. He glanced at her. Would it have been funny? Depends on the delivery. He laughed, real and unguarded, and Sonia realized she liked the sound of it. At home, and she'd started thinking of his apartment as home, which was dangerous, they'd fallen into a rhythm. He made coffee in the mornings, terrible and too strong, and she'd remake it while he protested. They ate dinner together most nights, trading stories about their days. He told her about the insurance business he was learning to navigate, the board members who still looked at him like a disappointment. She told him about her mother's last call, about her brother's acceptance to a good school in Accra. "You sent him the money," Alvin said. It wasn't a question. Part of it. From the first payment. "You should keep some for yourself." "This is for myself. They're my family." He understood that. She could see it in his face. On Friday nights, he'd try to make her watch old comedy specials. Education, he called it. "You need to understand why I failed." "You didn't fail," she said after watching one of his sets on YouTube. He'd been younger, nervous, trying too hard. But there were moments of flashes of real insight buried under the anxiety. "You just weren't ready." Generous interpretation. Honest one. He looked at her for a long moment. "You're good at that." "At what?" "Seeing people. The real version, not the performance." She didn't know what to say, so she changed the subject. But his words stayed with her. The cracks started showing in the second month. They were at a family dinner, the monthly gathering at Mrs. Park's estate where everyone was required to attend and pretend they liked each other. Sonia had learned to dread these nights. The questions were sharper, the scrutiny more intense, and Mrs. Park watched them like a director monitoring her actors. Alvin's cousin Miho was particularly antagonistic that night. "So, Sonia," he said over the main course, "how does it feel to go from cleaning our offices to sitting at our table?" The room went quiet. Sonia set down her chopsticks carefully. "It feels like I earned my place." "By marrying well?" "By being chosen by someone who saw value in me." She looked at Alvin, who'd gone very still. "Isn't that what marriage is supposed to be?" Miho smiled, sharp. "In theory." "Enough," Mrs. Park said. "Miho, focus on your own relationships before commenting on others." The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. Sonia felt exposed, the fiction of their marriage suddenly thin as paper. After dinner, she excused herself to the bathroom and stood in front of the marble sink, hands gripping the counter. She could hear laughter from the dining room, the clink of glasses, the sound of a family she would never truly belong to. The door opened. Alvin slipped in, closing it behind him. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You're not." He leaned against the door. "Miho's an asshole. He always has been. He's not wrong though." She turned to face him. "I did marry well. This is all transactional. I'm here because your mother paid me. You're here because I asked you to be. You didn't ask. Your mother ambushed both of us. I could have said no. So could you? He moved closer. But we didn't. And now we're here, and I don't know about you, but it stopped feeling like just a transaction a while ago. Sonia's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I like having you here. I like coming home and knowing you'll be there. I like the way you call me out when I'm being an idiot. I like, he stopped, ran a hand through his hair. I like you, Sonia. As a person. Not as an employee or a contract or whatever we're supposed to be. She wanted to say it back. That she liked him too. That somewhere between the practiced smiles and the scripted stories, something real had started growing. But reality was a sharp thing. Alvin, in 6 months I'm walking away with my money and you're keeping your inheritance. That's the deal. Deals can change. Not this one. Your mother made that very clear. She looked away. I can't afford to confuse what this is. And what is it? A job. The word tasted wrong. A very well-paying job. He flinched. She saw it happen, the way her words landed. But he nodded. Right. Of course. He left her alone in the bathroom, and Sonia pressed her palms against her eyes, willing herself not to cry. They were more careful after that. More distant in private, more convincing in public. It was a strange inversion. The closer they got to people watching, the further apart they felt when alone. The corporate retreat in Jeju Island was their biggest test yet. 3 days at a luxury resort, surrounded by board members and executives and their spouses. Team-building exercises during the day, formal dinners at night. And they were expected to share a room. Mrs. Park had been explicit, no separate accommodations. People will notice. So they stood in the hotel suite with its single king-sized bed and enormous windows overlooking the ocean, and neither of them said what they were thinking. I can take the couch, Alvin offered. Sonia looked at the bed. It was big enough for 4 people. Don't be ridiculous. We're adults. Are you sure? Alvin, I've shared a room with 3 other women for 3 years. I think I can manage one night with you. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Okay. The first day was bearable. They did trust exercises, falling backward into each other's arms, navigating obstacle courses blindfolded. Sonia and Alvin were paired for most of it, which meant they had to touch, to communicate, to move like they knew each other's bodies. It shouldn't have felt as intimate as it did. During the blindfold exercise, Alvin guided her through the course with his hands on her shoulders, his voice low in her ear. Step left. Careful, there's a rope. Okay, now forward. She trusted him completely. That was the problem. That night, at dinner, they were seated with Uncle Gene and several other board members. The conversation turned to the future of the company, to expansion plans and risk assessment. Alvin held his own, surprising even himself with how much he'd learned in 2 months. Uncle Gene raised his glass. Perhaps there's hope for you yet. It was the closest thing to approval Alvin had ever gotten from him. Later, in their room, he collapsed onto the bed. I didn't screw up. You did great. Sonia sat on the edge of the bed, slipping off her heels. Your uncle almost smiled. That's his version of a standing ovation. She laughed, and the sound filled the space between them. They got ready for bed in careful silence. Sonia changed in the bathroom, pulling on sleep shorts and a t-shirt. When she came out, Alvin was already under the covers on his side, leaving her plenty of space. She climbed in on her side, acutely aware of his presence. The bed was enormous, but somehow he felt too close. Good night, he said. Good night. She lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe. The ocean was loud outside, waves crashing against the shore. She could feel the warmth radiating from his side of the bed. This was a mistake. This whole thing was a mistake. Because she was lying next to a man she was pretending to love, and the pretending was starting to feel a lot like the real thing. She woke to sunlight and Alvin's arm draped across her waist. Sonia froze. They drifted together during the night, not intentionally, just two people seeking warmth. His chest was pressed against her back, his breath soft against her neck. She should move. She should wake him up. Instead, she let herself have this moment, this fiction where they were a real couple waking up together. Then his alarm went off. Alvin jerked awake, realized where he was, and pulled back so fast he nearly fell off the bed. Sorry. Sorry. It's fine. Her voice was steadier than she felt. We were both asleep. They didn't talk about it. The rest of the retreat passed in a strange haze. More exercises, more dinners, more performance. But something had shifted. Sonia caught Alvin watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. She found herself gravitating toward him in crowds, seeking his presence like gravity. On the last night, there was a bonfire on the beach. People roasted marshmallows, drank too much, told stories. Alvin and Sonia sat slightly apart from the group, close enough to participate but separate enough to breathe. This is nice, she said quietly. The bonfire? The ocean. I haven't been to a beach in years. We should come back sometime. He said it casually, but there was weight beneath it. Just us. No performance. Alvin. I know. 6 months. The contract. I remember. He looked at her. But can we pretend, just for tonight, that it's real? She should say no. She should remind him of the boundaries, the agreement, the fact that this was temporary. Instead, she nodded. He took her hand. Not for show, there was no one watching. Just because he wanted to. They sat like that until the fire burned down, fingers intertwined, and Sonia let herself believe it meant something. Month 4 brought new challenges. Mrs. Park announced that they needed to do a profile for a lifestyle magazine. Good publicity, she said. It will solidify your position. The interview was conducted at the apartment. A journalist and photographer arrived with lighting equipment and too many questions. They photographed Alvin and Sonia in the living room, in the kitchen, on the balcony. The journalist asked about their love story, their plans for the future, what they loved most about each other. Sonia recited the practiced answers. But when the journalist asked Alvin what he admired most about his wife, he went off script. Her strength, he said, looking directly at Sonia. She's the strongest person I know. She walked into a world that didn't want her and made a place for herself anyway. She doesn't apologize for existing. I wish I had half her courage. The journalist ate it up. Sonia felt like she couldn't breathe. After they left, she rounded on him. What was that? What? You can't say things like that. Why not? It's true. Because it makes this harder. She was angry now, the frustration of months boiling over. Because we have a deal, Alvin. 2 more months and I'm gone. You can't, we can't. Can't what? Feel something? Yes. He stared at her. You're telling me you don't feel anything? She wanted to lie. She should lie. But the words wouldn't come. That's what I thought, he said quietly. He walked away, leaving her standing in the living room with the ghost of camera flashes and too much truth. They barely spoke for a week. They still attended events together, still played their roles. But at home, they existed in separate orbits. Alvin stayed late at the office. Sonia spent her evenings in her room, counting down the days until freedom. 60 days left. 59. The money was accumulating in her account, monthly payments, plus bonuses for particularly successful events. She could pay off her debt. Send her brother to university. Get her mother proper medical care. Everything she'd signed up for. So why did it feel like she was losing something? On day 53, Alvin knocked on her door. Can we talk? Sonia set down her phone. About what? About the fact that we're miserable and there's no reason for it. The reason is that we crossed a line. No, the reason is that we both keep pretending there's a line that hasn't already been obliterated. He sat on the edge of her bed, running his hands through his hair. I know what the contract says. I know what we agreed to. But Sonia, I can't keep pretending I don't care about you. Alvin. I'm not asking you to stay. I'm not asking you to give up the money or change the deal. I just need you to know that this stopped being fake for me months ago. Sonia's chest ached. It stopped being fake for me too. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. So what do we do? He asked. I don't know. She looked at him, this man who'd become her friend, her partner, something more complicated than either. I still need the money. My family is counting on it. And you need the inheritance, the board seat, all of it. I need you more. You don't mean that. I do. He reached for her hand. These past 4 months, you've made me better. Braver. You make me want to be someone worth knowing. You already are. Then stay. After the 8 months. Not as an employee. Just as, he paused, searching. As someone who wants to be here. It was tempting. So tempting. But Sonia had learned not to trust beautiful offers. And what happens when reality sets in? When your family realizes I was paid to love you? When I'm still the cleaner who married up? You're not a cleaner. You never were. You're a woman who worked hard and got dealt a bad hand and still showed up every day. His grip tightened. And my family can think whatever they want. I'm done living for their approval. Easy to say when you have the money to back it up. Then take the money. All of it. I don't care. I'll sign over my share of the inheritance if it means you'll consider staying. She pulled her hand away. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. Alvin, we barely know each other. 4 months of performance doesn't equal a real relationship. You're right. It equals the beginning of one. Sonia stood, needing distance. I can't do this. I can't let myself believe this is real when it started as a lie. Then let's start over. After the contract ends. No money, no performance. Just us, figuring out if this thing between us is worth pursuing. It was a reasonable offer. It was more than reasonable. It was everything she hadn't let herself hope for. But hope was dangerous. I need time to think, she said finally. Alvin nodded. Okay. Take all the time you need. He left her alone with her thoughts and her fear and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she'd already made her choice. The final 2 months passed too quickly. They fell back into their rhythm, but everything felt different now. Charged. Like they were both waiting for something to break. Alvin was true to his word, he didn't push, didn't pressure. But he was there. Always there. Making her coffee in the mornings. Leaving her favorite snacks on the counter. Defending her at family dinners with a ferocity that made her heart ache. Sonia found herself watching him more. Noticing small things. The way he chewed his pen when he was concentrating. The way he always checked to make sure she was comfortable at events. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, like she was something precious. She sent more money home. Her mother's medication was covered. Her brother was enrolled in university. The debt was gone, erased as if it had never existed. She should have felt free. Instead, she felt unmoored. 6 weeks left. 4 weeks. 2 weeks. Mrs. Park called them into her office. The 8 months are almost up. We'll stage the separation after the annual gala. Something mutual and amicable. Sonia, you'll sign the NDA and receive your final payment. Alvin, you'll retain your board seat and full access to the trust. And if we don't want to separate? Alvin said. His mother blinked. Excuse me? What if we want to stay married? Mrs. Park looked between them, her expression unreadable. Then she laughed, short and sharp. Don't be absurd. This was never meant to be permanent. Why not? Because it's not real, Alvin. It's a contract. A business arrangement. It was, Sonia said quietly. It's not anymore. Mrs. Park's gaze sharpened. I see. And you think you can build a real marriage on a foundation of lies? People build marriages on worse, Alvin said. Not in this family. Mrs. Park stood. You'll proceed as planned. The separation will happen. Sonia will leave. And you, Alvin, will find someone appropriate when the time is right. Someone Korean, you mean? Someone who belongs in this world. She does belong. Because I put her there. Mrs. Park's composure cracked. Because I needed a solution and she was convenient. But this family has standards, Alvin. Traditions. You can't simply. I love her. The room went silent. Sonia's heart stopped. She looked at Alvin, who was staring at his mother with absolute certainty. I love her, he repeated. And I'm not letting her go because you're uncomfortable with the optics. Mrs. Park's expression was cold. Then you'll lose everything. The board will never accept this. You'll be removed from your position. Your trust will be frozen. Is that really what you want? I want her. He looked at Sonia. If she'll have me. Sonia couldn't breathe. This was insane. He was throwing away everything for her, his inheritance, his family's approval, his entire future. Alvin, you don't have to. I know I don't. I want to. He moved closer. I know this started wrong. I know we've been lying for months. But somewhere in all the pretending, I fell in love with you for real. And I'm not walking away from that. Your family can adjust. Or not. But I'm done living my life for them. Mrs. Park made a disgusted sound. This is ridiculous. Sonia, tell him. Tell him you're taking the money and leaving. Sonia looked at Mrs. Park. Then at Alvin. He was offering her everything and nothing, a future with no guarantees, built on the wreckage of a lie. But he was also offering her the truth. I do love you, she said. I've been trying not to. Trying to remember this was temporary. But I failed spectacularly. Alvin's smile was the most genuine thing she'd ever seen. So you'll stay? I don't know how this works. I don't know how we move forward from this. Neither do I. But we can figure it out together. Mrs. Park shook her head. You're both fools. Maybe, Alvin said. But we're fools together. The gala was their last official event. They walked in as a couple, just like they had dozens of times before. But this time, Sonia wasn't performing. She was just herself, a woman in a beautiful dress, holding the hand of a man she loved. The announcement came during dinner. Alvin stood, thanked everyone for their support, and then said something that made the room gasp. My wife and I have decided to make some changes. We'll be stepping back from certain family obligations to focus on building our life together. On our terms. Uncle Gene stood. That's not how this works. It is now. Alvin looked at Sonia. We've spent months pretending to be something we're not. We're done with that. There was chaos. Shouting. Mrs. Park looked like she wanted to vanish. But Alvin didn't back down, and neither did Sonia. They left before dessert, hand in hand, and drove back to the apartment in silence. "Your mother is going to kill us," Sonia said. "Probably. You really gave it all up." "Not all of it. I kept what mattered." He parked, turned to her. "I meant what I said. I love you. I love you too." It was the first time she'd said it without qualification, without fear. It felt like stepping off a cliff and discovering she could fly. They went upstairs, to the apartment that had become home. And for the first time in 8 months, when Alvin kissed her, it wasn't for show. It was real. 6 months later, Sonia sat in a cafe in Itaewon, across from her old roommate. "So you actually stayed," Mina said, stirring her coffee. "I thought you'd take the money and run." "I thought so too." Sonia smiled. "Turns out I'm terrible at following plans." "And the family?" "Slowly coming around. Uncle Jean actually complimented my presentation at the last board meeting." "You're on the board?" Alvin insisted. "He said if I'm family, I should have a voice." She paused. "We're also starting a foundation. Scholarships for immigrant workers. People like me who need a chance." Mina laughed. "From cleaner to philanthropist. That's quite a jump." "Not really. I just finally get to be visible." Her phone buzzed. A text from Alvin, running late. "Don't let them give away our table." She smiled and typed back, "I've got it." It wasn't the fairy tale she'd expected. It was messier, more complicated, with a family that still didn't fully accept her and a past built on lies. But it was real. And it was hers. Mina leaned forward. "So was it worth it? All of it?" Sonia thought about the contract, the performance, the months of pretending. She thought about the moment she'd realized the pretending had stopped. The moment she'd chosen to stay not for money, but for love. "Yes," she said. "It was worth everything."